Welcome, everyone. I am Lainey Savante Wilkin here with one of my favorite series on Zeta Global Radio, our Conscious Filmmaker series. And this is really, not only is it fun, is it exciting, but also incredibly important. Once a month, we always honor a series of filmmakers that are making a difference, making an impact, opening up our minds, our hearts, our eyes to ideas and thoughts and even causes that may not even be in our realm of understanding or knowing, or maybe across the world. And it's so important to support these beautiful beings who are telling stories that impact us all. It creates an opportunity for us to realize we're all one, we're all connected. And today is no exception. We have an extraordinary canvas of storytellers, and I'm really excited to share them all with you. Before we do that, let's check in with psychic medium and intuitive life coach Candace Thomas, who will share her insights on today's topic. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here today, as always.
Thank you for having me, as always. And the guidance I'm getting immediately from Spirit to share with all the listeners out there is ask, A-S-K. Whatever's going on in your life right now, if you need more direction or need support or assistance, remember to ask for it. And it doesn't have to be a long-winded, dramatic, use these special magical words to bring about change. It could literally be, please, I need assistance in my life right now, or I need help with moving past this situation. You can ask for, it's not even necessary to ask for help from specific beings. You can just ask Spirit. I started using the word Spirit because it was too difficult to think of all the specific archangels or angels or ascended masters to call upon in situations. And it's just easier by saying Spirit, it's all of the above. So examples of things to ask Spirit for are ask for, how can I make a difference, or how can I make a difference in the world? How can I be supportive to others today? How can I be an inspiration for others? Where can I find inspiration for myself? The questions can be big or small. You can also ask for specific help instead of guidance, such as, please, Spirit, bring me the relationships that will support me in my life right now. Please, Spirit, bring the finances, bring me prosperity right now. And the way that you ask, you can certainly ask for Spirit to bring it to you right now and make it easy, which I learned the hard way. So always, if you're asking for Spirit to assist you, remember to bring it now and make it easy, to add that as part of your intentions. So many people struggle feeling like they have to do it all themselves, or they have to think of an answer themselves or think of a solution, rather than surrendering to Spirit. Remember, all you have to do is ask. So more information about me and how I might be of service to you can be found on my website at www.candicethomasintuitive.com.
That's beautiful. I'm going to throw in my own there as I wake up every day, like I always say, Spirit, how may I serve today?
Beautiful.
And I find what you're sharing is so important. And no doubt that our storytellers today are filmmakers who really risk a lot, invest a lot personally to get these stories made, to touch us all, probably go through some of the things that you shared and expressed with others. So thanks so much for being here and to sharing your gifts. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with Filmmakers and Conscious Storytelling. I'm Lainey Savante Wilkin on ZGR.
Hey there, Broqueños. New Mexico's first cat cafe, Gatos y Galletas, is practically here. Be one of the very first to check out EDO's newest hotspot for vegetarian, vegan, and gluten-free eating while hanging with the cutest felines in the queue. The cats are also available for adoption. It's the most unique coffee and tea cafe you'll want to come back to time and time again. Not just for their freshly prepared local and organic meals and their smoothies, but also cat yoga, Spanish, and other events throughout the week. Keep listening here on Zeta Global Radio for more information on Gatos y Galletas, or visit their Facebook page now.
Welcome, everybody, to Zeta Global Radio. I am your host, Lainey Savante Welkin, and I am so thrilled to talk about our monthly series today. The topics are incredible. The storytellers, the filmmakers are amazing. The films are stellar. This is our monthly Conscious Filmmaker series where we talk about films that make an impact on the big screen, touch our heart, expand our consciousness. And we are here right now with Jeremy Frindel, filmmaker for One Track Heart, The Story of Krishna Das. If you don't know who Krishna Das is, I think after this interview, you're going to want to run out and see what this movie's all about, as well as check out onetrackheartmovie.com. Welcome to the show, Jeremy. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, as we do with every show, I love to get into the filmmakers who are behind the films, because a lot of the films, especially today, they have A-list talent, they have well-known icons, but it's always important also for the filmmakers who listen to know about the filmmaker, who you are, Jeremy, and really what led you to come together with Krishna Das and tell his story.
Yeah, I met Krishna Das many years ago when I started, after working in the film business for a number of years and having some good times and also, the sort of insanity that goes with that life. I was definitely looking for a way to take better care of myself and sort of looking for, something. I was trying to connect to something bigger, and I somehow stumbled into a meditation retreat. I didn't actually really know why I went. I just signed up for this thing on a whim, having never practiced meditation before.
But you were a filmmaker. You were a filmmaker for a long time. You had done other films, and
I had been working for maybe 6 or 7 years in just about every capacity on films, from recording sound editing, sound mixing, acting, writing, a little directing of some kind of short form stuff.
Okay.
And at that time, I was working on this show that I was starring in and writing, and some of my friends were producing and directing, that we actually got picked up by the Independent Film Channel to do this whole series. It was my big break kind of thing. And right before it went into production, it got dropped by the network, 2 weeks before we were supposed to go into production. So anyway, it was the kind of thing where I thought, my dreams are coming true, and then they totally crashed and burned, and I was a wreck, and somehow stumbled into this meditation retreat, having never practiced meditation. And it absolutely, totally changed my life. It felt like the lights were turned on, and coming out of that, I knew that there were a lot of things that I wanted to change about my life. I felt, and so coming out of that, somehow I had the idea that yoga would be a way to ground what I'd experienced in the meditation into my body, and kind of help me integrate some of what I'd experienced. So I signed up for a yoga teacher training, not because I had any interest in teaching yoga, but because it seemed like the only forum to really study deeply at the time.
Sure.
It seemed like I didn't just want to take class. I really wanted to learn, and that was the only format that I really found to do that in. And early in the teacher training, one of the guys who was leading it brought in a harmonium, and as soon as he started playing that instrument, it just touched something really deep in me. And I remembered having this recording from years ago. I don't even know how I ended up getting it, that I knew that Rick Rubin had produced, of this guy with a really deep voice, that I would put this record on sometimes, having no context culturally what it was. It was just music, and I liked it, and it kind of served a functional purpose for me if I was looking to come into a space. As soon as he played that record, as soon as he played the harmonium, I realized that was the same instrument that was on that CD I used to listen to, and quickly realized that it was Krishna Das. And then I went and I looked on the internet and saw that he was singing in New York in a few weeks, and went and had an amazing experience at the big church he sings at in New York on the Upper West Side. And then right after that, he was doing a retreat at Ananda Ashram, which is like an hour north of the city. So signed up, went on the retreat, and I just fell in love with him, just sitting, listening to him tell stories about his time in India, his time with his guru. He just had such a way of cutting through a lot of the bullshit that I sort of had perceived around some of those worlds, I guess.
Like a whole new paradigm for you, yeah.
And I just connected with him really strongly. And at that same retreat teaching the yoga was this man, Dharma Mitra, who I went on to study really intensely with for many years and traveled all over the world with. So anyway, it was this like real pivotal turning point where I really started going on a search and spent years. I kind of stopped working in films at that point. I was pretty burned out after the show didn't come together. And I spent the next several years really intensely studying yoga, traveling, and kind of going on an inner search. And somewhere in that process, I had the idea, like, why has nobody really made a film about Krishna Das? And that was the sort of link to pull me back to the storytelling and sort of cinematic world that I was so inspired by earlier. And
right.
Kind of connecting it to the work and searching that I was doing now on a personal level. I asked him if I could make a film about him. And I didn't really know him personally that well. I chatted with him a few times, but I knew some of the people around him, and there was a similar circle of friends. And so I sat down, I asked him, and he was like, yeah, okay, real fast. And another friend of mine, I asked if he'd be interested in maybe helping support financially and produce the project. He was like, right, great, let's do it. And I think 2 weeks later, I had a camera and was off traveling with Krishna Das.
Well, it sounds like it was completely your divine appointment, and I really want to honor and acknowledge Krishna Das, who kind of tuned in and just got, yeah, this is right action. It wasn't like, hi, I'm Jeremy Frindel. Here's my IMDb. Here's my entire slate of projects I've done. I'm worthy. It was kind of like you were just you, and he was just him. And the moment was, a simpatico in the making. Yeah.
I was told later that many people over the years have asked him to make a film about him, and it had never felt right or come together. And that when I came, something just clicked and it felt right. And he never asked to see anything I've done. He never asked if I knew anything about making films. There was no vetting process in that way. It was very much like the two of us sitting down together, and he's like, yeah, okay, let's do it. He had one condition, which was he said, you can shoot whatever you want, but if I say anything nasty about someone, you have to cut it out because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Well, and it's so good, and we're going to take a break here in a minute and really kind of get into the film, but that's such a good lead up to the story of where we're going to go, and such a great pairing. Of course, your film has interviews with Ram Dass and Rick Rubin and Sharon Salzberg, all sort of the well-known players in the industry. And of course, in our next half of the show, we'll have Gay Dillingham on talking about Robert Redford, Timothy Leary, Ram Dass, and with songs on the film from Krishna Das. So it's just such a beautiful ensemble of how everybody comes together. And we're really, not only today, but these films, and you guys are all sharing how community and collaboration really works. So that's kind of a great setup to talk about where we're going to go with this film. And I love the fact that you felt so confident. It was like you had the drive, and we talk about this all the time. The passion comes first, and then the money kind of follows, versus, well, how am I going to get the money? And, any of that, or was any of that going on in your mind, or you just kind of knew this is what you wanted to do?
I knew I was going to do it. I had no idea. I'd worked on a lot of films and had never really made one. So I sort of had a sense of what I was doing, looking back, I had very little idea what I was doing.
Then you fooled all of us because we love your film.
We were just kind of, I was just kind of figuring it out along as I went, and I had the support of, my friend Andrew, who produced it, was right there with me the whole time. Anytime, Andrew, I think I need to go to India again. He was right there supporting me. So, yeah, the money was, there wasn't very much of it, but I was definitely very inspired to do this, and nothing was going to stop me. So somehow it was going to come together, and it did.
Well, thank you to Spirit and all the upper realms who made this happen, and clearly with all the best documentary winning accolades you've been getting at film festivals, and of course now, we'll talk in the next segment kind of where things have gone with you, but you've touched a lot of hearts, and obviously Krishna Das has, and we'll get into who he is and a little bit about the film in our next segment. So we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to ZGR, Zeta Global Radio. I am your host, Lainey Savante Wolkin. We'll be right back.
It is an absolute fact that estate planning is essential for every single one of us. Yet most people put it off because it's uncomfortable to talk about. No one wants to think about the unthinkable. The Estate Planning Office of Attorney Fantina Becker specializes in affordable and accessible planning of wills, transfer on death deeds, and powers of attorney with kindness, patience, and compassion. Fantina also offers home visits to any clients with mobility issues or transportation restrictions. Avoid lengthy, expensive, and confusing probate proceedings and plan ahead with Fantina Becker and enjoy great peace of mind knowing that your wishes are cared for and the ones you love are cared for too. Call Fantina at 505-944-6726 or email fbeckerlaw@gmail.com.
Hi everybody, Lainey Savante Wolkin here, and when I am not on the airwaves, I'm busy being president of FemFessional's Albuquerque chapter. Right now through February 29th, we have a special for joining for business members, only $99 instead of $125. Join an extraordinary network of incredible women in the Albuquerque area doing great things, as well as across the country. Check out femfessionals.com. Welcome back to Zeta Global Radio. We are here today talking to storyteller, filmmaker, Jeremy Frindel, and his very compelling story for so many of us who listen to Krishna Das in the best of times, the worst of times. It's his music, I believe, for myself, has carried me through personally on so many levels. The greatest highs, the greatest lows, the music is the most soothing. And, to watch a story on screen about one of your favorites is always the best. But to now talk to a filmmaker who really gives some insider view on who Krishna Das is, it's really great that you're sharing this with Zeta Global Radio and all of our listeners worldwide. Thanks, Jeremy. Let's talk a little bit about who Jeffrey Cagle was and how he became Krishna Das.
Yeah, I mean that's the film, and he was, I think what I most connected to about him was that he never seemed like he had so much a grand plan. He never set out to, become kirtan superstar, or would have ever seemed like that was possible. He was just kind of following, what was inspiration and what felt like important and nourishing to him, and followed it through some really hard times that I think many of us can relate to, whether the specifics of, drugs and some of the stuff that he got into, but just, trying to find our way through life, which throws all kinds of challenges and curves at us. And for him, he had the amazing experience of the years he spent in India with his guru and that amazing group of people that were all there together. That's pretty mind-blowing, which is a big part of what I found amazingly inspirational about the experience of making the film, was all of these people that were with Neem Karoli Baba in India that have had such a profound impact on our world. And I mean, I don't know how much Gaze film gets into that with Richard Alpert, his transformation into Ram Dass, but Ram Dass to Krishna Das to Larry Brilliant to Dan Goleman to all the other people that have done such amazing work in the world, all sort of sparked this little temple in India and this amazing being who moved them all so much. So seeing all of them kind of going from there out into the world in their different ways.
When you kind of kept hearing about this Neem Karoli Baba, this iconic Indian guru, did you feel a connection? I mean, was coming back from where you were to walking into learning about meditation? I mean, sort of like your whole world shifted. And now there's the talks of gurus, and now you're doing a documentary on someone who's following a guru. Was that a path that you've ever taken?
The guru thing is very complicated, and I don't know, I've got sort of mixed thoughts and feelings on it. With Maharaji, I instantly felt at home. And just listening to Krishna Das tell the stories, all the other people that I would meet going to the temples that he founded, and being with Siddhi Ma, who he sort of left in charge of the temples, it all felt very much at home. And I felt a really profound connection in a way that I'd never really experienced with anything. So yeah, I was very moved by all of those stories, and being in the temples. It was a very, very powerful thing for me personally, and that experience was really what I was trying to bring through in the film. There's the word darshan, which I imagine a lot of people that are listening to this probably are familiar with, this idea of seeing, like being with a great saint or being, but that feeling of just being connected to something bigger, and that relationship that happens in that process was really what I was trying to bring through in the film, was to somehow tell a story and give an experience of a taste of what that's like for Krishna Das specifically, but in some way for anyone who connects on a path like that.
I think that you also conveyed in the film a beautiful message of being authentic, being in your truth. And what always sticks for me when I think about your film, and I've watched it several times, is how he was, on the road to being lead singer of Blue Oyster Cult, and how his life took a different turn. And it seems like a lot of the themes we've been talking about, either on air or off air, just in interviews I've been doing, how much a bad thing or a tragedy or, I know this personally, but also when bad news strikes, that it really doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. It's actually a message that's the beginning of a new journey. And I feel like there's a lot of beautiful messages even in your film saying that same thing.
Yeah, I feel like that's the story of life, right? I was reading the screenwriting book the other day that I thought was really funny. They gave their version of the 3-act story structure, which is you take a likable hero and you get him stuck in a tree, then you throw shit at him in the tree, and then you get him out of the tree. And somehow this idea or this experience that we all have where suffering is inevitable in the world. People that we love die. We have awful experiences happen, and somehow to find a way to metabolize them in a way that it brings us closer to life. That Krishna Das has a record called Heart as Wide as the World, and he talks about this idea of having a heart that is big enough to hold the greatest suffering and the greatest joys all in a place of tenderness, without letting them destroy us or devour us. And finding that strength and that perspective to maintain a sense of awe at the mystery and magnitude of life through the most challenging situations and through the most joyful situations. And that's, to me, like what stories are about, is helping us find inspiration and tools to deal with the challenges that we're inevitably going to be faced with.
Well said. Well said. Where is the film now in terms of, is it in theaters? Is it in distribution? Can you get it online? How can people see more of this one-track cart?
There's through Christian Russell's website, through the distributor Zeitgeist Films, you can buy the DVD online. It's on iTunes. It's on Fandor, which is awesome. If you're not familiar with Fandor, it's sort of like a indie Netflix where they've got really amazing films that are hard to find anywhere else.
Let me repeat that because the connection got a little staticky. Did you say Fandor?
Yes, Fandor, Fandor.
Okay, Fandor. Beautiful.
Yeah, I encourage people to check it out. But yeah, we just came up on there a month or two ago, which I'm excited about. No, it's iTunes, Amazon. I think it's on Vimeo, everywhere outside the U.S. So, but we did screen in theaters for, I think we were in over 100 theaters in the U.S. So it was a really exciting rollout for the film. We got really wonderful distribution with Zeitgeist, and they did just a really lovely job with the film. So it was all very exciting.
Just for the filmmakers out there listening, how was your experience in being picked up for distribution?
It was amazing. We had no idea what was going to happen, if anyone would ever see the film while I was making it, if it would just end up on his merch booth or if it would reach a wider audience. And I very randomly met somebody that works at Zeitgeist Films at my friend's barbecue. My answer was to go to Tom's house to a barbecue.
That's outrageous. You know what? It's just right place, right time, right action.
It's really guided by something bigger, and that I was just along for the ride. And Zeitgeist, they're wonderful. I really love so many of the films they put out. They put out Fierce Grace, the film about Ram Dass that Mickey Lemley made, I think maybe 10 or so years ago, and so many other wonderful films that they've helped bring into the world. So it was really kind of a huge honor to have them pick up the film and really fun to work with them. Distribution is a tricky and hard thing. As I'm making other films right now, I more and more realize how profoundly lucky we were to have the kind of situation that we did. So I have no advice on getting distribution other than just make the best film you can.
The universe will align. Do you want to share in the last minute we have here about any upcoming works you're currently involved in?
Yeah, I'm finishing right now a documentary about Vasant Lad, who is a man who first brought Ayurveda, Indian traditional healing system, from India to the West. So it's a lot about the sort of marriage and dance between the ancient and the modern and how that plays out in the world now in that realm. He's a really beautiful man and interesting life, so I'm excited to bring that one out. I'm hoping to finish editing it in the next few months. And then I've got a couple other projects in earlier stages of production, which, it's always until everything comes together and the financing is there, who knows if a project will actually materialize. But I'm working hard to make happen. So hopefully those will come to fruition as well, because they're both really great stories I'd love to share.
That's great. And of course, being in New Mexico, and it was a little staticky on the phone when you mentioned, but of course, Dr. Vasant Lad has his Ayurvedic Institute here in New Mexico. So we're very proud of that. And he's, you're right, an icon in his field. So it's just really exciting. You pick some good subject matters, that's for sure, Jeremy.
So much of it is where I want to spend some of my own life and be immersed in. So I feel lucky to have kind of been welcomed in by some wonderful people to share their stories.
Jeremy, thank you so much for being here and sharing your light, sharing your gifts, and we're greatly looking forward to having a bird's eye view of your next films coming up, and great appreciation for what you've done in bringing KD's story to the big screen.
Well, thank you, and thank you so much for all that you do of helping, shine the light on everyone else who's doing so much work. You tirelessly are always getting different things going and working to bring people together and share stories. So thank you for that. And it was really nice chatting with you, and glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you. That warms my heart. We're going to take a break, kind of bask in that beautiful energy, and then when we come back, we'll go right into our next incredible being, Gay Dillingham, with Dying to Know. You're listening to Zeta Global Radio.
Zeta Global Radio and the Lab Recording Studios are proud to announce our new partnership with V-Roast Coffee, because the coffee is just that good. Featuring a variety of air-roasted organic Arabica coffees such as Sumatra, Colombian, and Robustas from India and Madagascar, V-Roast also specializes in cold brew coffee, by the keg, or bottles, or by the case. And if you're a business in the Albuquerque, New Mexico area, and you have 20 or more employees, you can have this coffee delivered right to your front door. V-Roast Coffee ships their Java worldwide and proudly serves it up locally at Fans of Film Cafe and other select ABQ retailers. For more info, check them out at vroast.com and let Michael know ZGR hooked you up.
Fact: there are nearly 400 diseases that affect both humans and animals. Fact: with the exception of a few cancer and epilepsy funding groups, there aren't any other organizations that are bringing to light the essential need to study the connection of this significant area of research, except one: Pause to People. Bridges to Cures, a New Mexico nonprofit that is passionately committed to furthering comparative studies and compassionate research to save the lives of humans and our four-legged best friends. Learn more about the extraordinary work and grant that P2P offers. Visit bridgestocures.org or like them on Facebook and join a community that cares.
Women to Be fabricates and delivers kits containing underwear and washable sanitary pads to girls in a poor and remote region of Nepal. Girls who have these items stay in school and learn a skill, delay marriage, have fewer children, and boost their incomes for life. Hi, I'm Christine Glidden, president of Women to Be, and I'll be leaving for Nepal in April of this year, but I need your help. Please come to our fundraiser on February 20th. We'll have food and drinks and music with a Nepali theme, and you'll hear from Duka, my inspiration, who survived 17 years in a Nepali refugee camp before relocating to the United States. What a story she has. For tickets, please go to www.women2be.org. That's WOMEN, the number 2, BE.org. I hope that you'll join me in believing that when we elevate the life of a girl, we elevate the life of everyone on the planet. When we elevate the life of a girl, we ensure a better future for ourselves and our future generations. Thank you so much for your help.
Welcome back to ZGR. I am your host, Lainey Savante Woken. If you're just tuning in today, we are continuing our monthly series on extraordinary filmmakers who are lighting up the big screen. We had Jeremy Frindel with One Track Heart, which is an incredible documentary about Krishna Das. And if you did miss the first segment, make sure you go back to our ZGR archives, and you can find that on Zeta Global Radio. I'm very excited, very proud to have New Mexico-based filmmaker Gay Dillingham, who made Dying to Know, the incredible, and I emphasize credible, documentary on Timothy Leary and Ram Dass, narrated by Robert Redford. We had the absolute honor to watch it the other night, and a lot to share here. So welcome to ZGR, Gay Dillingham.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely an honor, and what a great pairing today. And of course, I am myself is such a total Hindu, so this couldn't have been a better pairing between your film and Jeremy's film about KD. So I think we should just get right into it. and talk about the film. But before we do that, I want to know about you, Gay, and how this all came about.
Can I first say how much I like Krishna Das, the film that you're talking about, One Track Heart. It's wonderful, and I'm really also grateful to Krishna Das because he contributed a song for the film about Maharaji, and so it's all connected.
Well, there you go. It's a big shout out to Jeremy. Jeremy, I believe, is extraordinary. And of course, everyone got to hear what he's doing in his new work with Dr. Vasant Lad at the Ayurvedic Institute. Great filmmaker. I'm going to have to get you two together at some point and say hello. So here we are talking about Dying to Know. And I was just reading your director's note on dyingtoknowmovie.com, which is a great website. But when I saw the movie, I was so taken by some of the last, interview scenes, and to find out that you actually were the one filming that directly says a lot. So I think I want to take a step back and give everybody a bird's eye view on who Gay Dillingham is and how you've kind of evolved into creating this extraordinary piece of history.
Okay, well, life is very nonlinear, but very the threads definitely connect. For me, my background was communications and environmental science, and kind of designed my own major, which was a think for yourself kind of school. So I started off lucky in a ranching family in Oklahoma with a lot of freedom and support and independence, I would say, in terms of the Leary Think for Yourself motto. But I have lived in New Mexico since 1987. And also at that time, first did a documentary called The Whip Trail on the Whip site down in southern New Mexico. And Mr. Redford was gracious enough to narrate that back in 1989. Wow. And, I did a lot of environmental kind of documentaries and then also did a children's program called My Body Belongs to Me. And then basically, and also Andrew Weil. This is another connection. Dr. Andrew Weil, we co-produced his first two PBS shows that really kind of helped launch his career. And at that time is when I started this Leary and Ram Dass project. And it was Andrew Ungerleider that came up with the idea, let's bring Ram Dass down to have a conversation with Tim. And that was right after Tim had announced in the media he was dying. And later we find out that Andrew and Ram Dass, we found this out only like 4 years ago, that Andrew and Ram Dass are cousins. The Alperts married the Gottesmans. So that's another very interesting thread. But it was 1995, and we were just having dinner and spontaneously said, this is a historical moment, what can we do? And so brought Ram Dass down and decided I was going to direct. I was the youngest in that particular foursome, so that was an interesting idea because, the more time has gone on, I realized I made a film that was different than a baby boomer would have made, I would say. And I was really fascinated with the fresh perspective these two guys had on some of the most taboo subjects we have.
Let me just ask you real quick, because there are a lot of filmmakers who listen to that. How do you feel, or why do you feel that you would have made a different perspective or a different film standpoint from baby boomers? That's interesting.
Okay, that's a good question. Because I was born in 65, I didn't live through those Harvard years when, there was a lot of, when the 50s ran into the 60s and blew up.
Right.
And so in directing and getting to know these two men in this dialogue to begin with in 1995 at the end of Tim's life, there were so many, the questions I created and the container I created for them was largely because I was interested in their perspective on death. And it's not just death of the body at the end of the life. It's all the ego deaths that we need to go through to live a fuller life, right? Because I had read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and then Leary and Alpert and Metzner had written The Psychedelic Experience, which was based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And I had lost my brother when I was 17. He died in a car accident. He's a fabulous human spirit, and I adored him. He was the center of my world. And so that really kind of brought me to my knees early in life. and started realizing how upside down we were as a culture around death. So that early experience is also when I started looking to some of these other ways of seeing it, and that's when Leary and Ram Dass kind of came across my radar. But the reason I think that I made a different film is because I didn't live through it. I didn't have my own preconceptions having lived through it. I had to literally work from the backward, from the future or from, backwards.
That's probably better that way. Then you're not so caught up in sort of the generational expectations of what they think we may want to see. You just kind of came at it from your own probably intuitive guideline.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'd call it beginner's mind because I was also working against this. My media culture had handed me caricatures of these two men. And the men I met on Tim's deathbed and then consequently for the last 20 years, Ram Dass, they were so intelligent and interesting and funny and loving, and I just felt like I had to reconcile these caricatures with the actual men I met. So it was a process of digging and looking through archives and interviewing other people. And also I'd say it was a real gift to see Timothy Leary, who was often glorified and demonized, but to see him through the love of Ram Dass. So through the lens of Ram Dass, you see Timothy in a whole different light. Because generally we tend in our culture also to judge, where we chew up and spit out. And in this case, you got to see it, a truthful picture of someone, but through the lens of love instead of judgment. Because this is also a cautionary tale.
Exactly.
And I didn't have a particular. I wasn't trying to glorify. I wasn't trying to promote. I was just trying to tell a story.
But I think it's so timely. In addition to everything that we're sharing about them as being iconic figures who have made movements in their respective fields, but also like in the age now of ayahuasca and medicinal plants, in cannabis being legalized, there's so much discussion about these elements, and if they're medicines, if they're drugs, whatever they are, that it's so appropriate that I think that the fascination with Leary's coming back so much that even people who didn't even know who he was, now he's very topical in conversation.
Right, and it is interesting because he was blamed for a lot of the research getting shut down 35 years ago, and this research has come back, and research with end-of-life anxiety, cancer, addictions, using various different psychoactive plants, and it's prestigious universities, Johns Hopkins, UCLA, NYU. Actually, I'll just throw out a real quickie here because Michael Pollan, the author, did a wonderful, very comprehensive summary of all the research in a New Yorker article. And it's called The TRIP Treatment. If anybody wants to look that up, you can find out more there. Leary was blamed, and I also felt that scapegoating, I realized this, you can't blame one person on the 60s. The 60s was not due to one person. It was definitely ready to break open, and certainly some of these drugs / medicines, depending on how you use them, had a big part to play in that. And I think that the drug war, Timothy was one of the first, if not the first, casualty of this drug war.
Sure.
He was put in prison, less than half an ounce of grass for, the first sentence was 35 years. And he did end up spending almost 4 years in prison, of which 2.5 was in solitary confinement. So he paid a price.
But what also you showed, with all the harshness and all he went through, the beauty of what we're talking about in sort of his end time is the softening. And not only the softening within himself, the softening in the love affair between these two friends, these brothers. And that piece was so heartwarming and showing the compassion for one to think and take notice of ourselves, and the way he was embracing his last days, I thought was so beautiful. The way he did it, the way you filmed it, the way it was expressed, all those pieces brought such a beautiful sort of well-rounded end to the film.
Oh, good. Yeah, you're right. And I just want to bring up the symbol of the yin-yang, because I often said, this film is like an archetype of the heart speaking with the archetype of the mind, meaning Ram Dass being the heart, Leary being the mind. And Ram Dass corrected me at one point and said, "Oh, but Timothy had such a big heart," which is true, and you see that at the end of his life. And earlier in his life, I'd seen him once in the 80s, and I didn't see that part. I only saw the showman, which was kind of the more ego part of his personality. But at the end of his life, you're right, he was so beautiful and so real and vulnerable and still intelligent,
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have a lot more to talk about with you, Gay Dillingham, and the movie Dying to Know. You're listening to ZGR. We'll be back in a moment.
Natural Awakenings presents the Natural Living Directory. We welcome over 100 different businesses showcasing their services in this special edition. Find out more about our practitioners through their business profiles and directory listings. Keep this issue all year long and share with friends and family. Now available at over 500 locations between Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and Taos. Do you need guidance on marketing your business? Looking for cost-efficient ways to reach thousands of readers? Call Andrea at 505-999-1319.
Hi, this is Akashiana sharing your Sacred Explorations upcoming journey with our Zeta Global Radio listeners. We will be taking a group to the beautiful coast of California with a deep-sea dive into sex, love, and higher states of consciousness with Jacqueline Longstaff for a weekend of transformation and remembrance of who we truly are. Check out Jacqueline's interview on Zeta Global Radio's archives. This course will be followed with Jacqueline's teachings on the inner wedding for all of us desiring to balance our inner masculine and feminine. Join me in these endeavors that are bound to open your hearts, still your mind, and connect to your deepest core of knowing. Sacred Explorations is part of Living the Path of Samadhi, dedicated to the expansion of human consciousness to bring equality and balance on planet Earth. Join us. Find out more on Facebook, Your Sacred Exploration.
Welcome back to Zeta Global Radio. I am Lainey Savante Wilkin here with Gay Dillingham from Dying to Know, talking about Timothy Leary, talking about Ram Dass, talking about death, talking about LSD, and all the pieces in between that really unite us. And the film is doing really well. Tell us about where it's at now in its distribution or its theatrical release. Where are we at with it? It's just so beautiful. I hope everyone gets a chance to see it.
Thank you, Lainey. I'm physically talking to you from Minneapolis right now. We're part of the Walker Art Center's hippie modernism show, The Winter of Love, and played there this last Saturday, which was really exciting and very well attended, and had a really great mix of people, including a whole group of high school kids that showed up. And I love it when I've got this intergenerational group, and we had a lively, beautiful conversation afterwards. And that's why I made this film, was really about engagement and conversation, and so that was exciting. And then we opened St. Anthony Main Theater tomorrow night, and we'll be here for 4 shows a day, at least for a traditional theatrical run, and at least for the week. And then if we do well, we'll be held over. So please send your friends if you're anywhere in Minneapolis or St. Paul. And we started, it was interesting how this whole thing happened. I, like many, thought, you make a film, you hand it over to a distributor. But I realized, obviously, after 20 years, I'm kind of attached to how this gets out into the world. And in New Mexico, first discovered without having to spend very much money, we kept filling up theaters, and people kept coming back and sometimes watching it 2, 3, and 4 times. So I thought, gosh, if I just do this well, I can, and we were able to curate these conversations afterwards, because you don't generally get to do that in a traditional, distribution of a film. And, I really feel like this is film and theater, and if done right, is our modern campfire, where we get to hear stories and talk about where we've been and where we'd like to go. So Minneapolis now, we're going to be in Boulder at the end of March, beginning of April. And our website does have tickets. We're also still in Tucson. Actually, no, we just left Tucson after 3 weeks. But dyingtoknowmovie.com, you can find out where it's playing. And we are not available yet streaming or DVD, but that will be hopefully soon. And, we're looking at maybe broadcast and or, other options. So I'm going fairly slow because I am right now doing it myself, and I'm finding, various distribution partners. Okay. So I'm grateful people are patient, but I have really wanted people to see it in a theater where you're really focused. It's a good quality projection with good sound, and in watching it with other people, it's really a different experience than watching it on a computer or when you're distracted and people are, walking in and out. Because I really, when you take two very interesting lives and a relationship in a period, and trying to pack it into 95 minutes was hard. So it's a pretty full film, pretty layered. And I want to do a shout out to David Leach, who was my editor, really good editor.
Yeah, and of course the music was phenomenal. And every time a song came on, I'm like, Jayata, Krishna Das, Sananam Kaur. I mean, it was just so beautiful. Everything was woven together. I mean, clearly you're the consummate professional in your craft. And it's great for, we have such a wide range of listeners, but this series, we also have a lot of filmmakers who listen and sort of glean advice or see how some people are doing it or what the inspiration or how they're distributing. So all the points you bring up are just terrific. And I'm sure a lot of people are excited that you had Bob Redford. Of course, I had, most people know, many years I worked with him as well, and in a different capacity than you, but, he couldn't have been a better voice with his warmth and his sort of that classic Americana. It was the perfect fit, not only just energetically, but just tonal quality and all.
Oh, God, I am so grateful. He is truly a master storyteller. So, yes, his voice was perfect. And, I'd gone to one of Billy's art openings. She has such interesting artwork that she does, multimedia. And anyway, I saw them there, and I asked them if they'd watched this rough cut I had. And, of course, my voice was the scratch track as the narrator and so forth. And I'd reached out to Susan Sarandon thinking I needed a female voice to balance the male story. And anyway, so Bob called on my cell phone the next day. It was very, very nice and said how much he loved it and kind of went on. And I realized he really understands the story I'm trying to tell. So I just kind of spontaneously said, how would you feel about narrating it? And he said he would be honored. So that was his first act of generosity. Well, first act of watching it. He gave me some really great advice over the phone a few times in terms of just the story. And then sat with me in my little editing studio on a hot summer day and helped me kind of refine the end, restructure it a bit, and help me get a little bit more out of it, meaning, I had some more cuts to make where I was kind of stuck. So he gave me, his patience and craft, and oh my God, that's, more than the narration, I'd say that's where he really also contributed. So eternally grateful to him, to Mr. Bob Redford, for his lifetime of real dedication to storytelling and the independent voice too.
No doubt. And then also the consciousness, because it's bringing in a lot of spirituality. It's bringing in so much about who Ram Dass was as well. And these what could have been perceived at one point was like total esoteric sort of left of center viewpoints are so mainstream now. And so many of us, walk some of these paths. And I just love that the circulation of Be Here Now, Ram Dass's first incredible book, is so widely distributed and so widely embraced. And of course, here in New Mexico, we're lucky. We have a Hanuman temple that kind of supports more of the Neem Karoli Baba and Hindu thoughts and, gathering communities. So you're right. It's all tied in, and it makes you realize the land of enchantment is called that for a reason, because a lot of magical things happen here, don't you think?
Aren't we lucky to live in New Mexico? Yeah. I just wanted to say, Be Here Now. It's 43rd, 44th printing now. And I noticed the other day at the Walker Art Museum with these young people, high school kids, right? It used to be, 10, 15, even 20 years ago, most young people knew Leary because of more the psychedelic part. And now, because Ram Dass is still alive, living in Maui, and he's got a great foundation and people around him that are putting a lot of his teaching on the internet, podcasts, as well as he's doing these live, retreats and so forth, that a lot of these young people are now really getting him and his teaching. And more young people now know Ram Dass than Tim. And what's really coming through is the Be Here Now. Because all of us are now addicted to our screens. It's very hard to be here now when we've got so much competition for our attention and spirit. And a lot of these kids are aware they've got to have, they got to get away from the screens and be here now and be present. And so these kids showed up with their little Be Here Now book under their arm. It was great.
How is Ram Dass doing these days? It's, of course, he had a stroke, and I don't know for the listeners if they even have an update on how he is feeling.
Yeah, in 1997 he had a very massive stroke and had 10% chance of survival. So the fact he even lived and came back to be who he is, he has deepened and grown in his wisdom so much since the stroke. That was 97. So his spirit is bigger and brighter than ever. His body is definitely, the spacesuit is wearing out. He's, being in a wheelchair that long is tough. You got infections and so forth, but there's a great group of people, friends and students taking care of him. And, what I've witnessed in knowing him for 20 years intimately is, he has been practicing what he preaches. He's not a preachy person at all, but it's a phrase. He's been practicing unconditional love for so long that he is truly resting in a place of unconditional love. He lives there now. I don't know that I know anybody else that can live there so consistently, and it's just so beautiful to be around him. You get the love the love vibe just being next to him. It's so sweet. And it also shows me that enlightenment, if we're going to use that word, definitely doesn't happen overnight. It's a lifetime of practice.
Of course. Well, that says a lot. For those, you actually see so many interviews from Krishna Das and from Ram Dass who say that Neem Karoli Baba exhibited that exact energy, and that so they're embodying, and they're like really passing the torch and carrying it on and bringing it to Western civilization. And, if that's what it takes to bring the message, how important that's, love is all you need. Love is all there is.
Indeed, and that's why Ram Dass's foundation is called Love, Serve, Remember. Because Maharaji, when Ram Dass said, what should I do? He said, feed people and love everyone, serve everyone. And he's been doing that. He didn't want to hear that at the time, but he listened to Maharaji and then started serving and loving.
Well, I think your film Dying to Know is serving many people and touching many hearts, and you're now carrying the message on so beautifully. And I thank you for sharing the time here with us at Zeta Global Radio and across the planet. We have a lot of listeners in a lot of countries, a lot of people in India, very strong following there. So thank you for your time. And with a minute left, any last parting thoughts from you, Gay?
Well, I'm just really grateful to you for doing this radio show. This is what we need. It's the growing pains of creating kind of a new spiritual way to be together with each other in community, and shows like yours help us create those new forms. And so I just want to end by asking you, where did the film leave you?
Oh, wow. It left me so like a warm bath. When you get out of a warm bath and you just feel like you put that warm towel around you and everything feels right with the world. It was like almost putting like a bow on a gift, like everything wrapped up really complete for me in so many things. I learned so much I didn't know. It felt so familiar to me, and I was just really just thrilled. Both Howard and I were so glad to have watched it, and of course knowing so many people, and then reading the credits and knowing some of the people, Linda McDill, and it was terrific, and I highly encourage everybody to experience it. It's an experience, no doubt. Footage you'll never have seen before, and that's really cool. And kudos and bravo to you, Gay. It was just wonderful having you here and watching the film.
Thank you, Lainey.
All right. Well, that's it for us here on All right. Everybody have a great week. We'll be back with another terrific news show next Saturday. Just check us out on Facebook or ZetaGlobalRadio.com. Blessings to all. Om Shanti.